we are here this evening with Mr. Jimmy Carter. Mr. Jimmy Carter was a 2019, I believe, Villager Award recipient, and we are so happy to have this opportunity to interview him and to let you have a little bit more information about him than what we got even when you were at the Villager Awards. So welcome, Mr. Carter. Jimmy,
Well,
welcome.
hello and welcome to you. And I'm great. It's a most definitely great opportunity to be here to speak with you. And I most definitely am just on the highest congratulations for being invited to be a member of the Villagers and a part of their recipient. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you, thank you, and thank you for all that you do. And we're gonna start right into that. Thank you for
Okay.
so much that you do, and we're gonna try to take it all the way back if we can.
Mhm.
And we're gonna go back to. Should I start over again? Let me
No, no,
think.
no. You're fine. Go ahead. Go fine.
Okay,
You're fine.
I'm gonna take you all the way back. Let's go back. Let's go back to your hometown. We heard a little bit about that at the Villager Awards, but we have just been intrigued with it. So tell us just a little bit about your hometown and a little bit about you growing up there.
Okay, as I said in the Villagers Award, I was born and raised in Tallulah, Louisiana, and I called it a little spot, a little bitty town, And when I was born in that town, there's a railroad track in that town, and as a kid, we knew our place, and other people knew their place within that town. So we thought, there were two schools. There was a high school or junior high and middle school, which was Wright Elementary, McCall High School, and we kind of knew our place when we go there. And then you had the other school, which was pretty dominantly, quote unquote, the white school,
Mhm.
which was Tallulah High School. And so when you look at this town at that time, in the 70s and things of that sort, early 60s and back there was a whole thing where the Chicago Mill was in that particular town. Most of the individuals, and specifically the black individuals in that town, were working on farms and working at that mill, and that was about all that you had. But it was a prosperous little town.
Mhm.
It had a lot to offer. Now, me speaking from my perspective, as a kid, I'm working around the community, working at the house, doing things with my grandparents and things that my parents had left for me to do while they were out on the farms doing their thing. But I started in what we call Head Start, just a little bitty small bad kid, as I've said before. I was bad. I have to admit that I was a bad kid, but I had lots of members of the community that were helping to actually steer me in the right direction. And it goes back to that old principle of it takes a village to
Yeah.
raise. And I came from a village. Tallulah itself was called Tallulah Village, and we had a little area that was there back in the days was called Delta Village. It was an amusement park that
Mhm.
everybody from all of the little areas from around the southern Louisiana would come to kind of entertain themselves across the weekend. But when we go into the education arena, I started in Head Start
Mhm.
kind of early. My mom put me a Head Start as she was working on the farm, thinking that, hey, this is a start. But the system didn't think I was ready. But my mom, being who she is, she kind of pushed against the system and said, "My kid can do it." And of course, when your mom's pushing for you,
Yeah.
that's something you got to most definitely jump in and do. And I think that's one of the things that kind of guides me to this day on pushing and going above and beyond actually what I do and how I do things. And that's why I go to reaching back and helping other people understand that if you're willing to give up something and push for yourself, you can accomplish anything you want. And again, let's keep talking about as far as my education. I went into Head Start, and from there I went into Wright Elementary. So Wright Elementary again, school with a lot of history. They kind of steered me from elementary school on up through the sixth grade. And then from sixth grade, you graduate from that school, and then you go over into the middle school. And
Mhm.
so at the middle school, it takes you from sixth grade through ninth grade, and then from ninth grade to senior, you're in the high school. Which so you had McCall Junior and McCall Senior High School, and so that was my dragon. That was the part of me that kind of pushed me into the real culture of learning. I was exposed to science, math,
Mhm.
and again, a bad kid. I wanted to be the class clown. I was likened to do my work, but I wanted to be the guy who was seen in class. And, the teachers were like, "I know your mom, I know your dad. We're gonna make a call on you." And again, you didn't want anybody to be calling mom and dad talking about your kids acting up. So I knew right then and there I needed to straighten up. But even though all of that was going on, I had members of the community and members of the school system who recognize things in me, and they would say, one day you're going to want to do something. And so with that, you need to do something with yourself. You need to get in that classroom and perform. You need to become a conducive member of society. And the way you do that is the reading, writing, and as they said in the old days, arithmetic.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. So you're reading, writing, arithmetic. And I have to thank teachers who were really there to make sure that not just myself, a lot of the kids during that time in Tallulah, Louisiana, they made sure that when you came through Wright Elementary, McCall Junior, McCall Senior High School,
Yes.
you had those basic concepts. And there were some other things that they push you, some advanced things, some multiple languages. I was in the aerospace science program in the high school, kind of gave me a little edge. And even then, I didn't really think about college like I should have been, music, sports, and all of that thing. I looked at the military. I was kind of tired of the books, and I said, I'm going to go to the military and do that thing. So that kind of covers a little bit of my
Yes.
upbringing, how I was raised in with a community. And of course, in that core was church
Yes.
every
Yes.
Sunday, Bible study,
Yes.
the mourners benches and things that happened back in that particular area of life. You knew if you were in the black community, you were going to church.
Yes.
Grandmother, grandfather, mom, and dad, you were going to church whether you wanted to or not. And you were going to sit on that bench and you were going to act right and you were going to behave. And all it took was a member just looking across at you. If you were cutting up, you knew that you were going to straighten up real quick when they look over there at you and say, "Hey, you
Yes.
don't want me to have to tell your mom." Or if they come by there and they pinch you on the ear or pinch you a little bit, you knew not to holler. You knew you weren't gonna be that kid that wanted to yell in the back and draw attention to yourself. So I appreciate all of that. And when you look at that back now in life, those are some of the other standard building blocks that kind of helped and mold me to where I am today. And I most definitely appreciate some of the things that some of the principals. I had a principal, Edie J. Gray and Francie Truwell. They were like Morgan Freeman in Lean on Me. They were very stern. They made sure, I mean, if it took walking those halls and getting you, and we had paddles, they whip you back
Yes.
in the day. And we had the corporal punishment. You go stand up behind the great cabinet in the classroom and you hold those books over your head, or you hold one leg up until the teacher tells you to put it down. And as you look there, teacher had no intentions of telling you to put it down. She wanted to see, and if you rock and fall over, you started over. So those were the kind of things that I kind of went through in my early education days, and so that's a little bit about my education background.
Excellent. That's an excellent start. I wanted you to share that story because you said something that I definitely resonated with, and that's the fact that this was a concept for the village concept we call it, because that's really what it is. Where everybody is really involved in you
Yes.
and having you be the best you that you can be, even when you don't know yet what
Mm-hmm.
that best you is going to be. And so I can resonate with that. I can resonate with
Yeah.
that. That was
And,
excellent.
and, and that was one of the great things about, you didn't always know. Even some of the family structures, there were some families that were more related to going to school. They knew what their structure was, and there were other families that weren't as fortunate, who had members of the family. They just knew they wanted kids to do well and
Yes.
go out and make something of themselves. And so that's where that whole village approach really helped to mold, was because people were true families. Even people who weren't really related to you, you
Hmm.
knew Uncle Joe, Uncle so and so, and Miss whoever. But these were people who you really grew up as a kid thinking they were related to you, but they were just neighbors or they
Right.
were just church members. But you were so close to them, and that they helped to raise you and mold you.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes. 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 Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you
Oh,
very
you're
much for
welcome.
sharing that. That's excellent. So let's see. So we get you all grown up here. And we're not all grown up yet. Let me back up because I think you were fairly young, as I recall, when you were
Yeah,
in the
I
military.
thought I was grown at
Tell us
that
about
point.
that. Yes.
And so as I left school thinking I'm grown up, I started off to the military. My dad and everybody was like, "Hey, they just knew I was going to school." So I was like, "Nah, I'm going to go to military." And my dad was kind of talking me out of it because he kind of knew he had the experience. He was a Vietnam vet, so he had his own experiences and his own personal reasons. But he didn't go to the point where he says, "You know what? If that's what you're going to do, I'm going to tell you not to do it. I'm going to let you have your own experiences." So he says, "Okay, you want to go, go." And he did support it. He helped train me to get me ready for going in. And I always remember the story where I tell people, I got in, I did all of the training, and then I signed up for the special stuff. And so I remember making this phone call home to my dad, and I told my dad, I think I made a mistake. And so as I'm talking to him over the phone, and I'm saying, hey, this is day of training. I'm here. I don't have anything to eat. My muscles are sore. I've got these plates in my hand, I'm moving side to side. And so all of a sudden, and I'm listening, and I tell my dad, it's like, hey, what do you think about this? And he's silent on the phone. Next thing you know, he says, "You go back. You go back to that training. You do you. That's what you wanted to do. So tough it up. Go on through it." And that's what I did. So I always remember that story and that whole series of events again that helped mold me.
Yes.
Sometimes we make decisions in life where young, old, we think we know what we really want. We really think we know what we're aiming for, and we run up against a wall. And so, what I
Yes.
take from that lesson that my dad taught me at the point when he went silent on the phone and told me to get back and get off his phone, you know, you're going to run up into walls in a life. You're
Yes.
going to run into things that are going to want to make you turn around from what your goals are, but you've got to toughen up.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to take those challenges and move on. And that's what I did with the military. I took those challenges, I moved on, I overcame those things, and I was fine. I served my time, I was got discharged, and then I went to college.
Uh-huh.
So
Very good. Now, tell me about college. I think you went to an HBCU,
I
and
did.
that's very good. We're glad to hear that. And I think it was Gremlin, if I recall correctly.
You are most definitely correct.
That
I was relieved from the army, and so when I went to the army on what they call ETS, while I was waiting for my final discharge, I
uh-huh.
signed up to Grambling State University. And so at Grambling State at that particular time, they had a program that was tied into Louisiana Tech and the U.S. Air Force, and it was an engineering / technology program. So I enrolled in that program, and so 3.5 years later, I left that college with an engineering degree, with a double degree in electrical and industrial, with a minor in drafting. But one of the great things about that, through that college, through those experiences, I kind of became a member of a great fraternity as well. So that college life kind of showed me some things and opened some ropes that kind of tied into my military, tied into my childhood, and it tied into the whole values of a strong community because there were members of my community that were principals, that were science teachers and things. And so as I was at college, one of my true high school friends, he was at the same college at that time, and he was a senior at that point, but he was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. And so my first college roommate was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. And so that kind of exposed to me to the fraternity life. But Grambling, I would not trade my experiences at my HBCU for anything in the world. Grambling gave me the opportunity to be myself. It
Mm-hmm.
gave me the opportunity to also be competitive within my race and external my race with that program that they had at Louisiana Tech. Because what it gave you an opportunity to see is that just because you choose HBCUs to get your education and background doesn't mean you can't be competitive.
Yes.
Because what you find out is there were a lot of members of Louisiana Tech who were coming to Grambling not because the classes were easy, because you got more details in
Yes.
what engineering was all about. You got more hands-on application because when you left at HBCU, they wanted to make sure you were ready to compete in the workforce. And so that was one of my loves and appreciation for what I got, and I wouldn't trade it in the world for anything.